Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this momentous day. It is Independence Day for Britain, as Boris Johnson said. I was looking at the Telegraph's Tim Stanley. His headline is, "This is the day the British people defied their jailers." He said, the people defied the experts, and they went with their conscience. He said, Labour voters, most of all the Northeast, rebelled against a century of Labour leadership. He says, I'm astonished, staggered, humbled. I should never have lost faith in my countrymen, those bold, brave, beautiful British voters. Good for you. You're leading the way in freedom. And you know, it was Winston Churchill who said in the history of the English-speaking people, now we've written a new chapter, by the way. This is going to be a new chapter. This is going to continue in America. We're going to talk to Roger Stone about that, but this is a new chapter. And he said, when America got its independence from Britain, it was a liberating thing for Britain as well. It unleashed freedom in Britain. It gave power to the people, to the parliament in Britain. And we're going to see this happening as the EU unravels. And you're going to see true multiculturalism. You're going to see the energy and the culture of the European people, which has been repressed and dumbed down, turned into this kind of politically correct gray mass, a lobotomized population who has been indoctrinated and controlled by a central government. You're going to see that explode, and creativity and diversity, true creativity, true diversity. So let's go to Roger Stone. Of course, Roger Stone has worked for many pro-American political parties in Eastern Europe. And I want to talk to him about that, but we're going to talk about a victory, first of all, that has just happened in regards to our presidential election here. Welcome, Roger.
David, great to be with you.
Did you see this coming? I got to ask you, did you really see this coming? Because I didn't. I thought the people were with it, but I thought they were going to rig the election. It must have been a total landslide for them to be able to win by 4%. I guess they figured they just couldn't swamp the votes that were coming in from the countryside by rigging it and the places that they control.
Yeah, globalism has taken two enormous hits this year. First, the rise of Donald J. Trump, and now the Brexit vote.
Yes.
Globalism is done, and the globalists are increasingly panicky about the prospects for the road ahead. I think this portends very good things about the American election, and I am very pleased with the developments in the Trump campaign. I believe they can now strategically get back on track, get back on offense, because when you're not on offense, you're losing votes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when I looked at this, Roger, we saw this division in the UK over Brexit. You had the Labour leadership really versus the Labour voters. The Labour voters had really gotten the shaft with globalism. And yet the Labour leaders, the Labour union leaders as well as the Labour Party leaders were supporting staying in this globalism that had cost their voters their jobs. And then we saw the Tory leadership divided as well. Here in America, we've got the Democrat leadership like Hillary Clinton, who was pushing, say, keep this together, and yet it's their voters, their blue-collar voters, who are being hurt by this, just like we saw in England. And then we've got the GOP establishment, and the only person on the other side of that is Donald Trump, but it's big enough that he can stand there with the blue-collar voters, I think, and with the Republican voters who understand what's going on, the people that Bilderberg was so concerned about, they called the precariat. I think they should be very concerned about that precariat. I think they should be very concerned about this, the people understanding how globalism has really screwed them over.
Yeah, I think it's a very analogous situation. I mean, ironically, it is the Democratic Party and the Clintons who brought us NAFTA. Remember what it was that Ross Perot said about NAFTA? He said that sucking sound you hear of the jobs leaving America.
Yeah.
Of course, he turned out to be exactly right. Once again, the leadership of the Democratic Party and some in the union movement supporting NAFTA. Now I think a great recognition, particularly among the Bernie Sanders voters, that these large globalist trade deals, whether it's NAFTA or TPP, TPA, they're leaving the American economy behind. So it is a precursor. I really believe at the end of the day, Trump will be able to get almost a third of the Sanders voters, not his hard left voters, but those labor-oriented voters who both oppose the Iraq War and oppose these globalist trade deals.
And who also oppose the establishment essentially controlling them, the corrupt establishment, because that was also a big part of it as well. People didn't like what was happening in Brussels, and people don't like what the establishment of both parties are doing to them. And that's a reaction that we see with the Sanders voters as well as with the Trump voters. So I agree with you. I think he's got a very strong case to make to both of them. Tell us what's going on in Cleveland now. I understand you got some new developments there.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday was kind of like the daily double. We won two important victories. Not only was I pleased about the vote in the UK, but the city of Cleveland had handed down a set of very restrictive gag orders on Trump demonstrators and Trump supporters for the days surrounding the convention. Many months ago, working with Citizens for Trump and others, we applied for a permit to have a specific march and rally outside the facility, the convention facility. The city delayed and delayed and delayed. They ultimately denied our permit. They gave one to Black Lives Matter, but they denied ours. And ultimately, they cooked up rules that would have required all protesters to be essentially in the same penned-in area. So in other words, Black Lives Matter, MoveOn.org thugs cheek by jowl with Liberty Republicans, Trump supporters, bikers for Trump, and so on. This was an obvious recipe for fisticuffs, for violence. Perhaps this is what the city Democratic machine in Cleveland actually wanted. They would not give us a specific location for a rally. They would not allow us to have our own public address system. They would only allow us to have access to a system set up in a certain area controlled by the city in which you have to apply to speak, and 20 people have already been approved. You can imagine they are the Vegetarian Party, the New Agers, I mean, every kook group you can think of. So with the ACLU supporting us, we went to federal court. I'm always skeptical about the judicial system because I believe judges are essentially politicians who climb to the top of the heap.
Right.
But in any event, yesterday a federal judge threw out the city's rules, specifically directed the city to reduce the security perimeter for the convention from 4 miles away to 1 mile away.
Wow.
Which is far more reasonable.
Wow.
That, in turn, I think opens a number of city-owned sites potentially for what was originally the Stop the Steal rally, featuring Alex Jones and Ann Coulter and other speakers, and is now hopefully will be the American Unity rally, and hopefully a triumphant moment for Trump supporters.
Are you still going to be confined into some kind of a cage? Because this is something that we've seen getting worse every round of presidential elections. Removing people who want to speak or to protest or whatever, removing them farther and farther away, putting them in cages, restricting their ability to speak. We've seen this as an ongoing trend, and every 4 years it gets worse. But now that they have shrunk the security perimeter from 4 miles to 1 mile, are they still going to be putting you in cages and restricting who can speak and that sort of thing?
No, I don't think so. I think the judge made it very clear that none of that was acceptable. So negotiations to settle. The city would like to settle the suit. We would like a city-designated area permit for a rally. We want a half-an-hour buffer before and after. And if we're a permitted activity, obviously we want the protection of the Cleveland police. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most amazing things about this process, David, is that all the time we were fighting with the bureaucrats at City Hall, individual police officers involved in this process would always take me aside and say, by the way, we're 100% for Trump. Yeah. And good luck with your lawsuit. So it is. I think it is likely that we will settle with the city, that we'll get a workable location. Now, of course, the city has stymied us for months in terms of getting people to Cleveland, figuring out where they're going to sleep, attracting the marshals we need to make sure that this is a nonviolent protest. So we're behind the 8 ball. On the other hand, I have great faith in both Donald Trump and the Liberty Movement, and I think we will have a huge crowd.
That's great. That's great.
A huge crowd in Cleveland.
That's excellent. And I remember when the Bundy Ranch thing happened, everybody was truly outraged. Here this was out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, literally the middle of nowhere. It was hours north of Las Vegas. Virtually all the land was under federal control. And they had a small enclave of people that were there to protest that were maybe about a mile away from the Bundy's ranch. And then as you got off of the interstate, in the middle of nowhere, as I pointed out, there's this little fenced-in area, and there was an officially printed up sign by the BLM that says First Amendment area. And somebody put a handwritten sign next to that and said, the First Amendment is not an area. And it got the Republican governor, and everyone was very concerned about what was going on there. Everybody was talking about how the BLM wanted to shut down free speech. We see this constantly. I'm really not certain. I've got more concern, I think, about what's going to happen with the Democrat convention in Philadelphia based on what Jakari Jackson and I saw when the Pope was here. We went to Washington and New York, and they were very cool with things. They were able to handle massive protests, and we saw that again in Washington when we went to cover Donald Trump speaking to AIPAC. But when we went to Philadelphia, it was unbelievable how they shut that city down, and that's where the Democrat convention is going to be. And there's going to be a lot of unrest there. I think people are not realizing just how angry the Democrat left is going to be in Philadelphia and how overreaching the Philadelphia Police Department and the mayor have been in the past.
Well, first of all, we would be naive to think that the Democratic city machines in places like Cleveland and Philadelphia are not in league with the Clinton campaign, because of course they are. Secondarily, I was very disappointed to see this morning Bernie Sanders say that he will vote for Hillary. Now, Bernie is not my cup of tea, and I made some caustic remarks about him early in the campaign, which I take back. I must tell you, I think he's run a great campaign, given the fact that he wasn't even a Democrat 6 months ago. He's raised an enormous amount of money. He has run a great grassroots campaign. I like where he attacked Hillary on war and trade. I only wish that he had attacked her a bit more on corruption and her abuse of women. But it is disappointing to see Bernie join the club and ultimately turn out to support policies that he doesn't really support.
Yeah, let's play the clip that he had. He was on Morning Joe today, where he was declaring his fealty to Hillary Clinton. And I want to get your reaction to what he said and the reasons that he gave for why he would support Hillary Clinton. Here's that clip.
Are you going to vote for Hillary Clinton in November?
Yes. Yeah, I think the issue right here is I'm going to do everything I can to defeat Donald Trump. I think Trump, in so many ways, will be a disaster for this country if he were to be elected president. We do not need a president whose cornerstone of his campaign is bigotry, is insulting Mexicans and Latinos and Muslims and women, who does not believe in the reality of climate change when virtually every scientist who has studied this issue understands we have a global crisis. This is not somebody who should become president. What my job right now is to fight for the strongest possible platform in the Democratic Convention. And as we speak in St. Louis, that's going on right now. That means a platform that represents working people, that stands up to big money interests. And that's what we're trying to do.
So your vote will be a vote for Hillary Clinton or against?
Well, I don't want to parse words right now. What I am trying to do right now is to make sure that the Democratic Party becomes a party that represents working people, not Wall Street,
so
that is prepared to have
an... Okay, so she wasn't really understanding whether he was going to vote for Hillary or for Donald, because he said he's going to stand up to big money interest. I think that really confused her, because they gave a mixed signal there. Roger, what do you think? Because she is the candidate for big money interest, isn't she?
Yeah, I think it's Bernie who's confused.
Yeah.
On the important issues of trade and war, his views are much closer to Donald Trump's than they are to Hillary Clinton's. Secondarily, if Bernie Sanders really thinks Hillary Clinton is going to police or clean up Wall Street, good luck on that. He is sadly naive.
Yeah.
But you also see the continuing effort on the left to smear Donald Trump as a bigot, racist,
Yeah.
hater, trigger happy, a lunatic. I've known Trump for 39 years. Knew his parents well. I know his family well, and I have great affection for them. These are lies.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump doesn't have a racist bone in his body. In fact, unlike Bernie Sanders, unlike Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump has created thousands of jobs for Black people, for brown people, for all Americans. So I see the 1964 Goldwater technique of the big lie. Oh, Barry Goldwater, he's nuts. You remember that, David?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was going to pull the button. You had the countdown Daisy commercial, you know, where they only played it once, but then the media just kept playing it for free over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's the same technique. And the problem you have here is that the American people now aren't buying it. In other words,
That's right.
I think voter dissatisfaction and voter suspicion has now spread beyond the institutions of government and the Congress and the political system to now include big media. In other words, the voters know that CNN is in bed with the political establishment. They know that CNN is only going to publicize information beneficial to the Clintons. That's why we sometimes jokingly call it the Clinton News Network.
That's right. And of course, that narrative of talking about how Brexit was xenophobic and racist, they didn't buy that either. You know, I talked about how the Labour Party was divided, and for the membership from the voters from the leadership, and how the Tories were divided. But the media in Britain was all together on that racist, xenophobe narrative. The people can get their information outside of mainstream media now, and the truth will out on this, and it did in the Brexit vote. We're talking to Roger Stone of StoneZone.com. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with another segment with Roger Stone, and then we're going to have Paul Joseph Watson joining us in the next hour. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Roger Stone, StoneZone.com. No stranger to those of you who listen to Infowars.com. We've been fortunate enough to be able to talk to Roger Stone, a very experienced political analyst. We're going to talk to him more about what he thinks Brexit means and its implications for the American election. Before we get back to Roger, real quickly, we have a new special, Deep Cleanse, 20% off at InfoWarsLife.com. And, of course, this is the Rolls-Royce of all-in-one cleansing. Instead of buying 5, 6, or even 7 different cleansing products, we put this all together in one after decades of scientific research. It's 20% off now at InfoWarsLife.com. This is our fastest-selling formula yet, and it's going to sell out pretty quickly, especially at this price. Also, we have Hillary for Prison T-shirts. Get your Hillary for Prison T-shirt, limited edition, 50% off for 1 week, and we've been doing this now for several days, so I'm not sure how much longer that's going to run. When you buy one for 50% off, you get a link to, and you'll see there when you buy that first one, you'll see a link where you can sign up for our newsletter. If you do that, you can get additional ones for 75% off. That's an incredible price. And just as I was pointing out, this one guy says this is a day that the British people defied their jailers. You know, Hillary wants to be your jailer. No, send her to prison instead, okay? This is there's either her or you. One of us is going to go to jail. And finally, we have the Alexa Pure water filters, 20% off at InfoWarsStore.com. That's everything from the highest quality, largest systems down to the shower filters that will take the chlorine out of your municipal water supply. All of those, 20% off, all the Alexa Pure water filters at InfoWarsStore.com. Let's go back to Roger Stone now. Roger, it was a great statement from Donald Trump. He said the people of the United Kingdom have voted to reassert control over their own politics, borders, and economy. He said, come November, the American people will have the chance to redeclare their independence. Americans will have a chance to vote for trade, immigration, foreign policies that will put our citizens first. They'll have the chance to reject today's rule by the global elite. They can embrace real change that delivers a government by and for the people. He says, I hope America is watching. It will soon be time to believe in America again. And so we saw the voters in Britain vote to make Britain great again. Will the voters in America vote to make America great again? I think they will. And I think this really lines up perfectly with what Donald Trump has been saying in this campaign. And what he's been saying, as you pointed out, with NAFTA and other things, he's been talking about this going back to the early 80s.
Yeah, Donald Trump's been very consistent. He has never been a globalist. He's always been deeply suspicious of he was opposed to NAFTA. He was indeed opposed to the Iraq War. There's another British analogy that occurred to me this week, David, and that is, as you know, there were tumultuous changes in the Trump campaign. Donald Trump, I think, wisely fired Corey Lewandowski, who was, I think, more concerned about himself than the future of a Trump presidency. Interestingly, now Lewandowski's going to work at CNN, which I view to be the most negative, the most anti-Trump of the networks.
Wow, that's interesting.
Many reporters have asked me in the last 48 hours whether the Trump campaign can possibly gear up quickly enough in terms of all the key elements that they need: organization, research, analytics, and so on. And the answer is yes. Now, the Trump campaign will never be the well-oiled political machine that the Clintons have, which is a bureaucratic, top-heavy, the assistants have assistants.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about that, too, because that was the narrative at the beginning of the week was, look at all the money she has. Well, look at all the money that Jeb Bush had. And we used to hear from these same people that it was a sign of corruption to have that much money. Now it's a sign of virtue. Stay with us. We're going to be talking to Roger Stone for another 5 minutes on the other side of the hour. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Roger Stone. We have him for one more segment. Paul Joseph Watson is going to be joining us in the next segment. And then the bottom of the hour, we have Dr. Steve Pachinik, who's going to be joining us to talk about the global implications of Brexit. They declared their independence yesterday, folks. It's going to be a long, complicated, messy divorce, but it's very important that they declared their independence. So we've been talking to Roger Stone about the parallels between the anti-globalist movement in Britain, the fact that they tried to portray this as racism and xenophobia, the same way they're trying to attack Donald Trump. But people understand that globalism is destroying their country. And so we're going to... I want to get back to Roger Stone because just before we had to go to break, he pointed out that Corey Lewandowski, who was just fired from the Trump campaign, is now working for CNN. I think that's really amazing. And, of course, everybody's been telling us all week, Roger, that it's really a problem for Donald Trump that he doesn't have the kind of money that Hillary Clinton does. But that's always been a virtue for them, to say, we got to get the money out of politics, and now they're saying they want it in. Of course, part of this is self-serving because they're the ones who are going to get those tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in TV ads, so they want to try to push that narrative. But the reality is that he's found a whole new way of campaigning. So tell us how you think that's going to play out now with the new campaign management staff that he's got.
The analogy that I would use is it is fair to say that the Trump campaign will always be a guerrilla type campaign, a seat of your pants, last minute, real, genuine, interesting campaign.
That's good news.
And the Clinton campaign will always be a boring, pre-tested, pre-scripted, pre-programmed bureaucracy.
She hasn't even had a press conference for 200 days plus, right?
The best analogy, David, the British Royal Army versus the American colonists.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is going to have agility and tactical flexibility. Not a single word comes out of Hillary's mouth that hasn't been polled, repolled, focus grouped, roundtabled, committee, considered, and then sent to her in written talking points.
Yeah.
Literally nothing the woman says came from her own brain. Whereas Trump, as you know, he's interesting. He's provocative. He's honest. He tells you what he really thinks, whether it's politically correct or not. And frankly, I think it is one of the keys to his appeal.
Absolutely. You want to know what he thinks. And sometimes he'll say something, then he'll have to walk back and clarify it a little bit. But I'm fine with that. I think people appreciate that transparency. We have no transparency from government now, but we are going to find out what Hillary Clinton really does say, because we've got these tell-all books that are coming out from the people who were putting their lives on the line to protect her. And when they say, good morning, ma'am, she just looks at the guy and says, F you, you know? I mean, this is the Clinton that the people around her who were protecting her with their lives knew.
Well, and I read yesterday that the Clinton spin machine, the Clinton press operation, very actively discouraging the networks and the cable news networks from interviewing the Secret Service agent Gary Byrne about his book. That in itself is outrageous. This is Soviet-style censorship. Why are the opinions or presentations of Mr. Byrne any less credible or less important or less covered by the First Amendment than the blathering by Bill and Hillary Clinton? It just shows the arrogance of these people. By the way, I've read Byrne's book. It is terrific, and it won't be suppressed.
That's right. That's right. All they're going to do is drive their media organizations further into oblivion, because you'll have people like Sean Hannity pick it up. We'll pick it up. We'll talk about it. We'll interview them. That's what the word is going to get out there. Roger Stone, thank you so much for joining us. StoneZone.com. That's great news about that victory in Cleveland. We're going to be right back with Paul Joseph Watson from the UK to break down his point of view on Brexit.